In this episode of P5 Live Walkthrough, we will get into installing this offline. So, why would you do this offline? The main advantage is in case you were VJing in a club and there's no Wi-Fi, you're down in a basement, or you simply want to work and bring assets into your document, into your sketches without having to be connected to the internet or load them remotely. So to get into offline mode under the About, there's a suggestion saying go to this offline. It's also at the very bottom of this list, but I think it's helpful to open this in another tab at the same time. So this opens up in another tab. It jumped to a slightly different spot. Here we go, offline server. There's essentially two ways that we can install this. There's the really quick way using Python, which is perhaps built into your computer. There's also the fancier way using nodejs, and I'll explain the difference of the two, but I'll demonstrate both of them. So the very first thing we need to do is download P5 Live or clone it. So this is actually at the very top of this thing. We can come back down to this. You have two options. If you are using Git and GitHub, then you may want to clone this so that you always have the latest version on your computer. If you just want to quickly get started, then you just say download zip, and that will download the latest version of this, 1.37 in this case. And I'll go back down to offline mode. I think I could have clicked the link at the top. Let's try that so you don't have to scroll. Offline mode. There we go. It takes us to the right spot. So we download P5 Live, and I would recommend throwing it into your documents folder. So let's go have a look at the Finder and make a new window. Let's go to our downloads and throw this fourth time downloading it into my documents. And find it, it is this one. I open it up and it by default called P5 Live main. Let's get rid of the main and just call it P5 Live. So here it is. Essentially, it has everything you need. The whole P5 Live project is actually sitting here. So you could easily modify it, you could customize it, you could do all kinds of things to it. The COCODING server is even here, which we can use when we do the fancy version. But okay, so we have this file. Then what I would recommend is to open up Terminal. I am pressing Command Space and Terminal to bring this up. Mine looks a little different because I've installed some special plugins and whatnot, but this is just the built-in terminal. On Mac, on a PC, you have Command Prompt. The next thing you want to do is CD for change directory and add that folder to the window and hit return. The other thing you can do is you can also drag and drop this folder over Terminal, and then it will open up a window putting you inside of that folder. So now I need to check which version of Python I have on my computer. So I just type Python --version, and it tells me I'm using 3.91. If you're on Windows, you may have to install Python manually first. Linux, of course, it's already built in. Mac, it's also built in. Depending on which version is activated, we have slightly different instructions to use. So for 3.0 plus, we say Python, make me a simple server on port 5000. So I can copy those instructions, go back to Terminal. I just realized I have this already running in another terminal window, which I'm going to stop for a second. Okay, it's all good. So I say Python, start me a server, port 5000. I press enter. It says I'm serving you this on port 5000. I'm going to open a new tab and go localhost 5000. And there it is. It is now running totally offline. This is actually my main repository of sketches and everything. I'm using offline all the time. So I actually have lots and lots of sketches here, which is interesting because I am actually loading P5 Live from another folder, but it doesn't matter to the browser. So long as it sees localhost 5000, it says, go grab that local storage. So I could test out If this had been the first time, what you will see, I can sort of imitate by making a new incognito window that doesn't know about my local storage, and this is what you should see. It should say, hey, welcome to for the first time to P5 Live. Click OK. It tells me at the top this is P5 Live offline, which is really important from the online version, so I can keep them separated. And then what I do is none of your sketches will be here because this is offline. So what I should do is go to the online version, and I could export just the sketches, or I could go under settings and just do a backup now to grab everything. So I'll say backup now, and that should have just downloaded a file. I'll click it again just to double check. And I will switch back to this window. And now I could drag and drop that file into the window. There it is, P5 Live Backup. I drag and drop it, and it says, backup detected. Do you want to import your settings and sketches? Yes, I do. Should I also replace the settings? Yep. Can I use the microphone? Yes, you can. And there we go. We are running exactly what we had running in the online version, now in the offline version. So I could turn off my internet and everything would be working just fine. If I want to run, actually before I go to the fancy version, let me show you the main advantage of this simple version, this easy way of setting it up. So again, all we had to do was activate a Python server from the folder of P5 Live. Control C is how you cancel that server. You can close the window or press Control C. And if I use the history, just the up arrow key in terminal, I can find that instruction again really easily, press return, and I'm running again. So I can refresh and it's okay. This will be interesting. If I refresh in incognito, I'm guessing I'll lose everything. Nope, it's still there so long as I have this tab open. Okay. Yeah, so again, if I press Control C and cancel it and refresh, it'll say, I can't find the site. It must be offline, which it is. Not even offline, it's just totally turned off. So I press up once, return, and now it's back and it's working offline. The advantage of working offline is I've given you an empty data folder where I recommend putting assets, put things in there. So I will make a new window and go search real quick for a tree. Let's see, tree.jpg. Let's just grab a simple tree. Okay. I'm going to copy this into my folder. So I now have something inside of data called tree. And because we've loaded this as our root folder, if I want to play with that image, let's make a new sketch. And I'll say, let there be an image, function preload, image equals load image data slash tree.jpg. So I have to tell it, go look in that folder. You will find the tree. If I get rid of the G, it tells me there's a problem. I can see it turned red. It couldn't find the file, but like this, it's fine. And now I could say, let's have an image of my IMG, follow my mouse X and Y, and there is our great tree. I could also make it smaller. Image.width times 0.25, image.height times 0.25, and now I have a nice smaller tree. So I'm loading this file offline. This is also a big thing for loading assets, loading libraries. I'll get into that in another section. We can load all of these things offline when we're using the offline mode. Things that we cannot do is technically we cannot co-code. I forget what happens if I try pressing that button and I'm not using the fancy one. I'll save that for a blooper or something. But technically, we need to be using the fancy installation to have COCODING accessible because we need to use nodejs to run the WebSocket server, how COCODING works. So what I'll do is I'll go back to terminal. I will cancel this and I will say, I'll go back to our instructions. So it's live. We go to that website. One last thing I actually want to tell you before I do the fancy version is if I go to P5 Live, the terminal, by default, I suggest using port 5000, but we can also change this number, and each time we change the number to some other number, it's actually a different, to the browser, it's a different instance of P5 Live. So for this little spinning webcam in the corner, I'm actually running P5 Live a second time on port 5009, and so I can tell the browser to go to 5009, and there I have this webcam sketch ready, and I can use it, and I'm not having any conflicts of multiple times having this open. Okay, but for the fancy version, you do the exact same thing. You download P5 Live, you put it into the folder. You need to install nodejs and npm. There is a link to the binary installer if you don't already have this. You open up terminal, you put yourself inside of the P5 Live folder, which we've done. So this is all up to that point. And then you just have to say npm install. It takes it a couple seconds, and what that does is it installs all the dependencies that are necessary for both COCODING and for using OSC, this special way of sending messages around the computer. So it said it's all done, and now I can type npm start, and it's the exact same thing. It's running on port 5000, but now it's running the fancy version. Whoops. Let me select that again. It says visit this. Actually, I don't need to copy it. I already have it waiting here. I reload. Everything looks the exact same, but I'm running the fancy version. I press COCODING, start COCODING. Let's take this sketch just to have something. No, actually, let's just start from scratch. I say COCODING, and here I can see localhost 5000. It built a room. Everything is ready to be COCODING locally. And I can say, let's just have a mouse, an ellipse rather, mouse Y, 50. So we have something that we're drawing, and I'll collapse this window a little bit. I'll copy this. Let's open up another browser and go to the same page. And here it is. There's now 2 people inside of this room. I can see I just joined my own COCODING. So this is wild for being able to collaborate with other people in the same room on the same Wi-Fi. You don't have to be remote across the world. You may just want to jam with other people in the room, and this will be much faster. Your syncing between each other will be instantaneous rather than everything going to space, going to the COCODING server and coming back. So I highly recommend running offline if you're just going to work locally with friends. There are some details. You will want to check out this section on HTTPS, especially if you're working with audio, that we can easily ask it to start a secure server. That way your friends can connect to you over a secure server. It builds dynamic certificates. We can also allow people remotely to click into our offline version of P5 Live using a tool called ngrok. Is a really wild way that we can basically make this offline version of P5 Live available to the web. So that's something also to explore and read about. But the key things with this fancy version is that we have COCODING, which we just demonstrated. I'll turn that off. And we also have OSC. I'll go down here and click Input OSC. What is OSC? Open Sound Control. This is an amazing way that we can send messages between peer data, Ableton, MaxMSP, Connect sensors. It's used for all kinds of ways of sending messages around your own computer and across networks. And so it's a great way to collaborate with musicians and do VJ for every time they hit a trigger pad. And just to demonstrate this, I have a small script for processing. So let's go check that out. I'll make a new tab and visit this. And this is designed for processing 3.0. I haven't checked if it works in 4. Hopefully it does. I'm going to copy this sketch, the whole thing. I'll open up processing. It is loading. Okay, I'll bring it over here so we can see it. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'll select all and replace it with this sketch. And basically what the sketch is it's using the OSE P5. So this is a library you would have to install inside of processing using their package manager. You just go import library, add library, and then you select OSE P5. And I'll go back here and show you what's happening. So let me hide the code for a sec. We can see I'm sending the coordinates of my mouse. And now I'll go to this sketch and run it. And I'll sort of put these side by side so we can see this a little bit better. There we go. My processing sketch is basically sending messages as though it was like somebody pressing on an MPC, kind of triggering notes. Who knows what this data is? It could be people walking past a sensor in the room. It could be anything. And those notes are being received. It's showing you which channel it's getting which value. And so in the code here, it's essentially receiving that communication, passing it through, and has a little function to say, let's draw something when it gets a message. Here it is. What I'm doing in the browser is constantly sending my mouse coordinates. And you can see in the window on the right, that's now drawing out into that window. So this is pretty wild. We can communicate between programs. And to do this, you have to be running the offline version because you'll have to look into OSE, but it's really on a local network, kind of sending data around. Yeah, so that's just one example of using the fancy version. I'll stop this. I'll go back to just our basic image. I go back to terminal. I can stop Control-C. I'm now no longer running the offline version. I want to run it again. I just press up to run the fancy version, or I do the Python for the quick, easy version. Once you've installed the fancy version, there's no reason to use the Python other than the fact you may want to have multiple copies of P5 Live running at the same time. If you're doing a really fancy installation, then you might want to take advantage of saying, there's actually a port 5000, let's say 111. I run it, and now I can technically go to 500111. And this is a brand new version of P5 Live, so I could be really running multiple copies of this thing for some kind of special installation. But by default, I just want my fancy server npm start, and I'm ready to go back to 5000 and continue where I left off. So I hope this has helped you get up and running in offline mode so you can load assets, and we'll get into that in the next one, loading libraries and more types of data. Ciao.